Hey everyone, welcome to Life Reflections. Today I'm sharing a life story that might just hit home for you. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more moments that matter. Let's dive in.
Claire stood at the edge of the world she once knew, gazing out at the skyline from the penthouse that had once felt like home. The city lights twinkled like stars, but all she saw was darkness, a shadow cast by the man she had loved, the man she had trusted, Peter. Her hands trembled as she gripped the cold glass of the window, trying to reconcile the view with the reality that had unfolded before her. The luxury surrounding her, the expensive furniture, the views, the extravagant gifts, had all come at a cost. And now, it was as if it had never been hers to begin with. The moment she had stepped inside, something felt off. Something was wrong. Peter had always been the charming, ambitious husband. The one who promised to take on the world with her by his side. The one who spoke of dreams, of tech empires, of their future together. But that was before the truth began to surface. That was before she realized how far he was willing to go to build his empire, even at her expense. As Claire stood in the vast living room, her heart pounding in her chest, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the space. Peter. She could hear him before she even saw him. His steps were deliberate, his voice calm, as if nothing in the world could shake him. "Claire," he called out softly, though there was no warmth in his voice. "The driver will be here in 15 minutes. You can leave whenever you're ready." For a moment, Claire couldn't breathe. Leave? After everything they had been through? After 8 years of marriage, 8 years of sacrifice, 8 years of pouring her heart and soul into the company they had built together, he was telling her to leave as though she were just another problem to be solved. As though she were nothing more than an inconvenience. Her mind raced back to their early days. Back to when they were young and hopeful. Back to when Peter had first swept her off her feet. He was charismatic, driven, full of ideas and ambition. He had talked of changing the world, of creating a revolutionary company in healthcare tech. Claire, fresh out of grad school, believed in him, believed in their shared dream. She had everything she had, her inheritance, her trust, her support, in him. She didn't question it. She didn't think twice about wiring every penny of her $2 million inheritance into Horizon Health, the company they had built from scratch. It had felt right. She thought they were partners, co-founders of something that would outlast them both. But now, she stood there in disbelief. She turned to face him. Peter stood there, as calm and collected as ever, leaning against the wall with a glass of whiskey in his hand. His expression was cold, devoid of any real emotion. This wasn't the man she had married. This wasn't the man who had promised to build a future with her. This was someone entirely different. Someone who had used her, manipulated her, and now, without a second thought, was discarding her. "You know, Claire," he said, taking a slow sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving hers, "Horizon Health is about to go public. The IPO is ready. It's all coming together, just like I always said it would. You helped me get this far, but we both know this marriage was never going to last. You were just a stepping stone." She felt the words hit her like a slap to the face. A stepping stone? All those years of sleepless nights, of working side by side, of building the foundation for Horizon Health, was it all just a transaction? Was she just another part of his plan, another means to an end? Peter's voice was smooth, calculated. "You should be proud, Claire. Thanks to you, we've built a tech empire. Horizon Health is the leader in digital healthcare security. But now, I need someone more suited to this new phase. Someone who can stand by my side at conferences, at meetings, someone like Vanessa." Vanessa. The name rang out like a death knell. Claire had suspected something for months, ever since Vanessa, the young, overly cheerful assistant, had started showing up in every company photo, always standing just a little too close to Peter, her eyes shining with something more than admiration. But she had brushed it off, told herself she was being paranoid. After all, Peter always had an eye for talent. But now, As she looked at him, she realized the full extent of his betrayal. Vanessa had taken her place, not just at the office, but in Peter's life. "You think I don't see it, don't you?" Claire's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of years of suspicion and hurt. She took a step forward, her eyes locking with Peter's. "You've been planning this, haven't you? All along. You used me, used my money, used my trust. And now you think I'm just going to walk away quietly?" Peter smirked. "You should be grateful, Claire. You were great in the early days, helping get things off the ground. But Horizon Health isn't a small project anymore. It's global. And I need someone who can handle that." Vanessa gets it. She's sharp. She's strategic. And most importantly, she doesn't let emotions get in the way. His words were like daggers. Claire clenched her fists, fighting back the tears. He had replaced her, not just in the company, but in his life. She had been the one to invest in his dreams, to make them real. She had believed in him, in them. And now, she was nothing more than an afterthought. Just another woman who had served her purpose and was now being discarded. Peter continued, oblivious to the damage he was doing. "Vanessa understands tech. She's already been stepping into your role, handling the bigger deals. You are important, but not anymore. This is the next level." Claire stood frozen for a moment, taking it all in. She had always known that Peter's ambitions were sky high. She had always been there, in the background, supporting him. But this was more than she could have ever imagined. With a final glance at the life they had built together, Claire turned and walked out. The weight of it all crashed down on her. The money, the time, the love she had given. All of it was meaningless to Peter now. She had poured everything into him, believing in their shared vision, only to be cast aside like she was nothing. As she stepped out of the penthouse, she felt the sharp chill of the night air, a stark contrast to the warmth she had once felt in that space. It was over. But Claire wasn't going to go quietly. The next day, as Peter prepared for the IPO, Claire was already one step ahead. She had made a plan, carefully, methodically, silently. While Peter celebrated his upcoming fortune, Claire was gathering the pieces that would bring his world crashing down. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was hers. And no matter what it took, Claire was ready to expose the truth. The weight of the betrayal settled heavily on Claire's chest as she stepped into the elevator, her heart pounding in time with the soft hum of the ascending machinery. She could feel the tension in every fiber of her being. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the collapse of everything she had worked for, everything she had given. As the doors slid open and she walked down the hall of the penthouse, Claire felt an unfamiliar chill against her skin, as though the warmth of her life with Peter had vanished in an instant. 8 years. That's what she had given him. 8 years of her life dedicated to building not just a business, but a dream. It felt like it had all been in vain now. Every late night, every sacrifice, every ounce of her belief, gone. All of it had been traded for nothing. Peter, the man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her money, her heart, her life, was now treating her like an unwanted relic of the past. Her mind raced as she replayed the days, the months, the years that had led up to this moment. When had she started to lose herself? When had Peter stopped seeing her as his partner and started seeing her as a tool to use for his success? She had invested everything, every single penny of her $2 million inheritance, into Horizon Health. It hadn't even been a question. When the company had barely been a name on a PowerPoint slide, Claire believed in Peter. He had been so full of hope, so passionate about his vision of transforming healthcare with technology. He talked about it like it was the next great revolution, and she, in all her naive belief, followed him, trusted him, and believed in their future. But now, everything she had worked for belonged to him. The company they had built together, her money, her ideas, her support, was all now Peter's. And Vanessa, the woman who had stepped in and replaced her, was taking over the very spot Claire had once held in Peter's life and the company. The sacrifices. She thought back to the countless sleepless nights they spent side by side, drafting business plans, meeting with investors, making deals, Peter, of course, taking the spotlight while Claire quietly made things happen in the background. It wasn't about the fame for her, she had never needed it. But as time passed, as Horizon Health grew, Claire began to realize that she was being pushed further and further into the shadows. At first, it was subtle. Peter would be in all the media interviews, smiling for the cameras while she quietly worked behind the scenes. But as Horizon Health expanded, Claire started to notice the shift. Her influence was diminishing, replaced by a younger, more strategic woman who was given more and more responsibility. Vanessa. Claire's fingers tightened around the edge of the elevator button. The name tasted bitter in her mouth. Vanessa had been there from the start, a bright-eyed assistant, eager to learn, eager to please. But now, Vanessa was more than just an assistant. She was Peter's confidant, his right-hand woman, the one who stood beside him at every important meeting, the one who took her place at his side. And she had no idea what she was truly stepping into. Vanessa didn't know. She didn't know the sacrifice Claire had made, the trust she had placed in Peter. But more importantly, she didn't know the pain of being discarded by the very man you thought you loved. For the first time in what felt like forever, Claire allowed herself to feel the full extent of the hurt. She thought of the lavish trips, the dinners, the celebrations, all the while knowing that they were building an empire. But now, as she stood outside the penthouse, she realized the truth: they weren't building anything together. Peter had been building something for himself, all along. She had been the investment, the stepping stone, and once she had served her purpose, she was no longer needed. And the worst part? He hadn't even had the decency to acknowledge the role she had played in creating the very empire that was now worth millions. The empire he was walking away with. As Claire sat in the back of the car, heading to her temporary hotel room, she could feel the weight of everything she had lost: the life, the love, the partnership. It was all slipping away like sand through her fingers. Her mind wandered back to that moment when Peter had told her to leave. "The driver will be here in 15 minutes, he had said, as though everything they had built was no more than a transaction that could be wrapped up and discarded. He hadn't even seemed to care. But she wasn't done. The hurt was raw, but it wasn't the end. She wasn't just going to fade away into the background. She wasn't going to be the forgotten wife who had helped build an empire, only to be replaced by someone younger, smarter, and more strategic. As the car pulled into the hotel, Claire looked out the window, her eyes scanning the skyline once more. The lights twinkled, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a spark of something else. Not just anger, not just betrayal. No, it was something more. Something sharper. Something that would drive her to the one place where Peter could never go: truth. She wasn't walking away. She wasn't just going to allow him to take everything they had built together. She would expose him. She would take back what was rightfully hers and force him to face the consequences of his actions. Claire was done being the victim. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the company. It was about control. About showing Peter that she was more than just the woman he had tossed aside. About showing him that the woman he had discarded would not be forgotten, not as easily as he thought. Claire leaned back in the plush hotel chair, the coolness of the glass window against her cheek. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the city sounds flood her ears, but inside, a storm was brewing. She wasn't done with this. Not by a long shot. The weight of Peter's betrayal crushed Claire's spirit, but she was not one to let herself drown in despair. As the days passed, she found herself in a strange place, not quite defeated, but not yet ready to fight. Every minute spent in the hotel room felt like another step away from the life she once had. But the sting of betrayal was sharp, and it slowly began to sharpen her resolve. Claire spent her first night alone in the hotel, staring at the cold, sterile walls of the room, the silence of the city below only making the emptiness feel more pronounced. She tried to sleep, but sleep didn't come. Instead, her mind raced, replaying everything that had led to this moment. Every choice. Every investment. Every sacrifice. It had all been for Horizon Health, for Peter. And then, in the quietest hours of the morning, it hit her. Peter had not only betrayed her trust as a wife, he had betrayed her trust as a business partner. He had taken everything from her, including her right to share in the success they had both worked so hard to build. Her pulse quickened as she replayed their conversations, the cold, calculated way Peter had dismissed her, the finality with which he had pushed her out of his life. But it wasn't just his words that stung, it was the realization that he had been planning this for a long time. He had already lined up his next move. The betrayal ran deeper than Claire had originally thought. It wasn't just about a new assistant replacing her, or Peter stepping out of their shared vision. It was financial. Peter had been using her inheritance, her hard-earned money, to further his own ambitions, without so much as a thank you. Worse, he had been hiding transactions, setting up secret accounts to funnel money away from Horizon Health, away from the company they had built together. Claire's fingers trembled as she sat down at the hotel desk, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating the dark room. She needed answers. She had been blind to the signs, but now everything seemed clear. It was time to start digging deeper. Time to uncover the truth. The first step was simple: review the company's financial records. Claire knew Peter had always handled the company's finances, but she also knew that the systems they used, systems Claire had been integral in setting up, allowed for multiple levels of access. When they had first started Horizon Health, everything had been transparent. Claire had always been in the loop, signing off on budgets and transfers, making sure everything was above board. But now, she realized, there was a layer she had missed. Using the credentials she still had, Claire logged into the company's internal accounts. Her heart raced as she opened the most recent transaction records. What she found made her stomach drop. A series of payments, small at first, but growing larger by the month. All going to an account listed under the name Altosyn LLC, an offshore company registered in the Cayman Islands. It was listed as a shell company, no website, no publicly available information. But the payments were there, steady and consistent, flowing from Horizon Health's accounts into Altosyn's. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Peter had been siphoning off money, her money, their money, into an account that didn't belong to him. Altosyn LLC wasn't just a random name, it was a front, a place to hide his actions. And there was more. She found a chain of encrypted emails between Peter and a financial partner, one that hadn't raised any red flags before. The emails discussed strategic restructuring, but the language was vague, and there were references to dividing company assets and shifting equity to outside investors, a veiled reference to Vanessa, Claire was sure. Claire's hands were shaking as she scrolled through the documents. This wasn't just poor judgment, it was calculated theft. Peter had intended to erase her from the company, from their partnership, and take everything for himself. He had been planning this from the very beginning. By the time the sun rose, Claire had spent hours combing through records, matching transaction dates with their business meetings, and cross-referencing names with the company's old files. The pieces were falling into place. She wasn't just going to walk away. She wasn't going to be erased. As the hours passed, the strategy began to take shape. She would expose him. Claire wasn't the type to lash out impulsively, she had always been calm, calculating. But this was different. This was personal. Peter had crossed a line, and she would make sure that everyone knew it. She reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the contact list. It was time to make the call. Claire dialed the number she had been avoiding for weeks, the number of someone she had known she would need eventually. Sandra. Her old friend from grad school, now a savvy corporate attorney with a reputation for digging deep and finding the truth. Sandra picked up on the second ring. "Claire," she said, her voice steady and calm. "What's going on?" "I need your help," Claire said, her voice shaking but determined. I need you to look into something. Something big. Peter's been hiding money, and I need you to get me the evidence." Sandra was silent for a moment. "Are you sure about this?" Claire hesitated. Of course she was sure. She had seen the numbers. The transactions. The evidence was all there, right in front of her. "I'm sure. And I'm ready. I need this done before the board meeting. I'm going to confront him." Sandra's voice grew sharper, more alert. "I'll handle it." "But Claire, this could get ugly. You know that, right?" "I don't care," Claire said, her voice fierce now. "He's going down." The next morning, Claire sat in her hotel room, preparing for the most important meeting of her life. The confrontation. The board meeting was in just a few hours, and this time, she wouldn't be the silent partner in the background. She wouldn't be the forgotten wife. She would be the one with the truth. The one with the power. She glanced at the laptop one last time. The files were all there, ready to be presented: Peter's financial misconduct, the illegal transfers, the shell company. It was all in black and white. Peter would be exposed. And with it, she would take back what was rightfully hers. Not just her money, not just her place in the company, but her dignity. She stood up, a sense of calm washing over her. The storm inside her had settled. She wasn't afraid anymore. It was time to bring the truth into the light. The glass doors of the boardroom were usually a symbol of exclusivity, a threshold reserved for the elite, for the people who held the company's future in their hands. Claire had always stayed on the outside, watching from the periphery as Peter took the lead. Today, however, she was different. She was no longer the quiet wife, the background investor. She was a force ready to take back what was hers. She took a deep breath as she stood outside the boardroom, the cold metallic surface of the door cool under her palm. The familiar hum of the building seemed to fade as her heart pounded in her chest. She had prepared for this moment for weeks, gathering evidence, making connections, hiring the best attorney in the field. She wasn't walking in as the discarded partner anymore, she was walking in as a co-founder, armed with the truth. Claire pushed the door open with a calmness she didn't feel. Her heels clicked sharply on the polished floor as she walked into the room. 12 faces turned to her, some surprised, others uneasy. Peter's face, however, was the one that betrayed him the most. He sat at the head of the table, confidently discussing the upcoming IPO with a casual arrogance that Claire had once found endearing but now realized was his greatest weakness. His expression faltered as his eyes met hers. "Claire? What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice faltering slightly. Without saying a word, Claire stepped forward, the laptop she had carried with her feeling strangely heavy in her hands. She placed it down on the table with a quiet thud. The room fell silent. "I'm here," Claire said, her voice unwavering, "to remind everyone of something you seem to have forgotten, Peter. I'm not just your ex-wife. I'm one of the founding partners of Horizon Health. And I'm here to set the record straight." The board members exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some were uncomfortable, others were confused. But Claire wasn't finished. She opened the laptop and connected it to the large screen at the front of the room. The image that appeared on the screen made Peter's face drain of color. It was the proof, everything he had tried to hide, laid out in black and white. The first slide showed the signed contract from the early days of Horizon Health, dated back to when the company was just an idea, a few lines on a PowerPoint slide. Claire had signed it. The $2 million transfer she had made to get the company off the ground was clearly visible, along with the terms that had outlined her right to be involved in the decision-making processes. She wasn't just a passive investor. She was a partner. She clicked to the next slide. On the screen, a series of bank transfers appeared. Each one was a direct payment from Horizon Health to Altosin LLC, the offshore company Peter had been funneling money into. The amounts were staggering, growing steadily over the months. Claire had seen enough to know that these payments were not just corporate expenses. They were stolen funds. Each one was another nail in Peter's coffin. "These are the transactions," Claire said, her voice steady, though the weight of the moment pressed on her. Money that should have gone into Horizon Health's development was siphoned off into an offshore account that you control, Peter. This is financial misconduct. This is theft. Peter shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the table. "You have no right to be here, Claire," he began, trying to regain control. "This is an internal meeting. You have no standing." "Actually," Claire cut in, her gaze never leaving him, "I do. I've been with this company from the start. I've put everything I had into it, including my inheritance. I signed the contracts. I helped build this from the ground up. And I'm not going to let you steal it all while I'm shoved aside." The next slide displayed an email exchange between Peter and one of his financial partners, discussing how to divide equity in secret, without Claire's knowledge or approval. Peter's signature was there, clear as day. And beside it was the name of Vanessa, his assistant. The same woman who had taken Claire's place, not just in the company but in Peter's life. Claire's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her heart racing as she pressed forward. She clicked to the final slide. On the screen, a series of emails appeared, emails Claire had discovered between Peter and his lawyer, discussing ways to dilute her shares and remove her from the company completely. It was all there. The plan to erase her from the company they had both built, the careful scheming to take control of everything she had helped create. The room was now completely still. The board members were no longer looking at Peter with admiration. They were looking at him with suspicion. "You planned this, didn't you?" Claire's voice rang out, cutting through the silence. "You thought I wouldn't find out. You thought you could push me out, erase me from the history of this company, and no one would care. Well, you were wrong." Peter stood up, his face pale, the cocky confidence he had always exuded now completely gone. "Claire, you're making a mistake. This is a misunderstanding. These numbers, these emails." Claire didn't let him finish. "No, Peter. This isn't a misunderstanding. You've been stealing from the very company that I helped build. You've been planning to take it all for yourself. And now, everyone here knows the truth." The board members sat back, some in shock, others deep in thought. A few of them exchanged murmured conversations, but none of them came to Peter's defense. Claire had done what Peter never thought possible, she had exposed him. Claire turned to the board, her voice steady but full of resolve. "I don't want to destroy this company. I never did. But I won't let him erase me, and I won't let him destroy what we built. I'm here to take back what is rightfully mine, my company. And I'm here to make sure that Peter faces the consequences of his actions." A silence settled over the room, the tension thick and palpable. Claire knew what was coming. She had done what she set out to do. The truth was out. Peter stood frozen, his face a mix of anger, disbelief, and fear. But there was no way out now. The damage was done. The silence in the room was deafening. No one spoke. The weight of Claire's revelation hung in the air like a thick fog, clouding every thought and conversation. Peter stood frozen at the head of the table, his usually composed demeanor shattered. His face, once flush with arrogance, was now ashen, his eyes darting nervously between the board members who had once admired him, now looking at him with suspicion and disbelief. Claire didn't look at him. She didn't need to. Her focus was on the board. 12 faces, some familiar, some new, stared back at her, some in shock, others in contemplation. She had taken them by surprise, but she had also made them see the truth. The truth she had held onto all these years, hidden behind the closed doors of their corporate world. She stood there for a moment, allowing the weight of her words to settle in, before speaking again. "I'm not here for vengeance," Claire said, her voice calm but resolute. "I'm here for justice. I'm here to make sure that what we built together remains intact, and that the people responsible for making it what it is today, the real founders, the real partners, are recognized. She turned her gaze toward the board members. You've all seen the evidence. You've heard the lies. Now, it's time for action. Horizon Health deserves to move forward with transparency, integrity, and a commitment to its people, not to the whims of a CEO who thought he could control everything with a hidden agenda. A murmur rippled through the room, and one by one, the board members began to speak. At first, their words were hesitant, unsure of how to proceed. But then, Richard Fletcher, the oldest and most respected board member, leaned forward, his voice steady. Claire, he began, I've known Peter for years. He was brilliant, ambitious, a visionary. But what you've shown us today, this is beyond betrayal. It's a violation of everything we stand for as a company. You're right. Horizon Health needs a new direction. One that's based on honesty, not deception. He paused, looking at the others. The others nodded, some slowly, others more firmly. Peter's empire was crumbling before his eyes. Richard turned to Claire. We'd like to offer you the role of executive chairperson, Claire. You've proven that you not only have the vision but the integrity to lead Horizon Health. We can't continue with someone like Peter at the helm, not after what he's done. We need someone who believes in the company's values, not just its profits. Claire's breath caught in her throat. She had always been an investor, a partner, a supporter. But now, she was being offered the highest position in the company. Her company. Without hesitation, Claire nodded. I accept, she said, her voice steady. But we need more than just a new leader. We need change. We need to rebuild the trust that was lost, with the board, with our investors, and with our employees. And I will not rest until Horizon Health is restored to what it was meant to be. The room seemed to breathe again, the air lighter, charged with the excitement of change. Peter's face twisted with disbelief, his earlier bravado shattered. He opened his mouth to protest, but Claire cut him off, her gaze sharp. This isn't your company anymore, Peter. You're finished. The board members nodded in agreement, and Claire's heart raced as the weight of the decision sank in. This was her moment. The moment she had fought for. Richard Fletcher turned to Peter. Peter, after reviewing everything and considering the board's concerns, we have no choice but to remove you as CEO. Effective immediately, your position is terminated. Horizon Health will begin a full internal audit to investigate all financial activities over the past several years. We will also be working with the authorities to determine the full extent of any legal violations. Peter's face reddened, his jaw clenched. But there was nothing he could do. The truth had been revealed. The board had made their decision, and Peter's empire, the empire he thought he could control forever, was crumbling. With a final, defeated glance at Claire, he stood up and walked out of the room, his once confident strides now slow and uncertain. The man who had once been the face of Horizon Health was now nothing more than a shadow. With Peter out of the picture, the next steps were clear. Claire was now at the helm, and Horizon Health would begin the difficult but necessary process of rebuilding. The company was no longer just a symbol of Peter's ambition. It was Claire's vision now. The media buzzed with news of the board's decision. Headlines read, Horizon Health CEO fired amid corruption scandal, Claire Carter appointed as new chairperson. The public, once enamored with Peter's genius, now turned their attention to the woman who had exposed the truth. Inside the company, Claire wasted no time. She immediately called for a full audit of the company's financial records, going over every single transaction, every expense, and every shady deal that had been covered up by Peter. She made sure that every department knew what had happened and assured them that transparency would be the new foundation for Horizon Health's future. But it wasn't just the finances that needed fixing. Claire made it clear that people, the employees, the team members who had been loyal to the company through thick and thin, would come first. It was their hard work, their dedication, that had made Horizon Health what it was. They had been loyal, even when Peter's actions had betrayed them. They deserved to be part of the new chapter. As for Peter, he wasn't done. He would face the consequences of his actions. Legal investigations were already underway, and the evidence Claire had uncovered would follow him wherever he went. But even that wasn't Claire's focus anymore. For her, the true victory was not in seeing Peter suffer, it was in seeing Horizon Health revived. It was about reclaiming what had been lost, about building something stronger and more sustainable than before. The work had only just begun, but Claire was ready. The board had made its decision. The company was hers to lead now, and Claire was more determined than ever to make sure Horizon Health would not only survive, but thrive. Under her leadership, Horizon Health would not just be a tech company, it would be a symbol of integrity, a company built on trust, innovation, and respect for everyone involved. And as the days passed, Claire could already feel the company's energy change. It was like a breath of fresh air, sweeping through the halls of Horizon Health. The company was alive again, and this time, it was built to last. Claire stood at the head of the boardroom table, looking around at the people who had once doubted her, and now, were looking to her for direction. The future of Horizon Health was in her hands, and she would make sure it was a future worth fighting for. The weight of Claire's journey had always been carried in silence, her hurt, her disappointment, the years of quiet sacrifice that Peter had never acknowledged. But now, in this final moment, she felt a strange sense of calm wash over her, a peace she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the satisfaction of winning, it was the recognition that she had done it on her terms. As Peter's face had twisted in anger and disbelief when the board removed him from his position, Claire had stood there, unwavering. Her heart had beaten steadily, her breath even. She wasn't triumphant in the way most people might imagine. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. About proving to herself, and to everyone watching, that integrity could stand stronger than deceit. That strength didn't come from fighting fire with fire, but from facing the truth head-on and letting that truth speak for itself. Peter had played his game with arrogance, believing that he could outsmart the people around him, control the narrative, and make his empire unshakable. He had underestimated Claire. He had underestimated her ability to build something of her own, her resilience, and her quiet strength. Most of all, he had underestimated her belief in doing the right thing. The boardroom had been heavy with tension when the vote to remove Peter was finalized. But when Claire had been appointed as the new chairperson, the room shifted. It was a shift in power, yes, but it was more than that. It was a shift in narrative. It was the moment when Claire went from being the discarded wife, the silent partner, to becoming the leader of her own story. As the media buzzed with headlines of Horizon Health's dramatic turn of events, Claire didn't feel the need to step into the spotlight. She didn't want applause or public acknowledgement. What mattered most was the moment she had in that boardroom, the moment when the truth had come out and the right person stood at the helm. But the true emotional payoff came later, when Claire stood alone in the company's office, looking out at the city skyline. It was just her now, no one beside her to share the weight of the world, no one to lean on. But she realized something in that quiet moment, she didn't need anyone's validation. She had built something once, and now, she was going to rebuild it again, on her terms, with integrity at its core. Her eyes scanned the city below, the same city where she had once stood by Peter's side, dreaming of the future they would create together. Now, she was creating it alone, but she wasn't afraid. This was her company. She had always been the one who believed in it. And now, the people who truly mattered, the employees, the board members, the ones who had worked beside her from day one, would finally see her for who she truly was. The storm of emotions that had raged within her for so long now began to calm, leaving behind a quiet sense of empowerment. This wasn't about destroying Peter. This wasn't about proving him wrong. This was about reclaiming what she had lost. And in that moment, she knew she had already won. In the weeks that followed, the media interviews started rolling in. Journalists asked Claire how it felt to expose her ex-husband, to take back the company that he had tried to steal from her. Claire smiled politely, but inside, she knew the answer. It felt like freedom. The company was moving forward, but so was she. She had proven to herself and the world that nothing, no betrayal, no underhanded deal, could take away her ability to lead. It wasn't the grand, dramatic revenge that some might expect from a story like hers. It was quieter, more powerful. It was the kind of victory that only came from standing tall, even when everything around you seemed to be falling apart. And as Claire walked into the boardroom, the seat that was once Peter's now hers, she couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction. She wasn't just surviving. She was thriving. She had taken the pieces of her broken past and used them to build something stronger, something more lasting. In the end, she had proven that strength and integrity, those two values she had held onto all along, would always win over deceit. The final message was clear: no matter what betrayal she faced, Claire had the power to rewrite her own story. And this was just the beginning.
That's it for today's story on Life Reflections. I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or a story of your own. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe to keep the reflections coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.